salam so many times in the script. So I called the attorney and I said, why are you crossing Prophet in front of Ibrahim? He said, because we do not believe that Ibrahim was a prophet. We believe that he is the father of all prophets. And that's when I said to myself, I'm going to go and study what the Judeo-Christian teachings are about Prophet Ibrahim and contrast it with what we know about Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam. And I think this is very important. That's why I asked the man to invite the sisters to come close. And you can come closer if you want, because we want you to know this, then you can teach your children and grandchildren for those who apply. So first, we go and do interfaith meetings. We started the interfaith movement in 1978. We got a message from the Pope, John Paul II, in Los Angeles, at the Islamic Center of Southern California, telling us that his Minister of Foreign Affairs is coming to Los Angeles. He wants to start a dialogue between Muslims and Christians. And we sat together, and this was the first time we had this, and we were afraid that the community may not accept it. It took us a long time to get the community to know. But our most important goal was to understand what is the thinking of the people of the Judeo-Christian background. And because we live in America, which is a majority Christian, and Judeo-Christian, and Zionist Christians, and we don't know how they think. And many of us live 50 years and 60 years and we don't know. So I want to share with you some highlights of the little research which I did. Now, first we start with the Bible. Now, we of course, the Bible, say, is the book of the Christians. Actually, the Bible, the big thick book that you see in the hands of the people of the Christian faith, with all my respect, and nothing here derogatory about them. It consists of a big thick part, consists of the Old Testament as written by the Christian scholars, followed by 4 books, which are the way 4 different priests have, or disciples have written it. And of course, we know the 4 priests, and they are different way of actually the Bible. So what you see in the big thick book is nothing but a very small book, and that's why we call it the New Testament. And that's something that you need to know. So if you pick up the Bible, you need to inspect that and let your children know what the Bible is. And that is not, you have 2 goals. The first goal is that you let them know what the Bible is, and to strengthen their faith in the belief of the Holy Quran, the last book of Allah to mankind. So the Bible consists of 4 books, one written by St. John, one written by St. Mark, and one written by St. Matthew, and one written by Luke. And it's all the same document. Plus 12 of the letters that were sent by the 12 disciples to Jesus Christ. That is the first thing about the Bible. The second thing about the Bible, it is used by all the priests and commentators and TV evangelical people on television, who I actually follow them very closely when I go to Dallas, Texas, and I have extra time. They use it as a book of predicting the future. They say that these horses were blind and this is going to happen. So I'm sure you have heard some of these different stories. In contrast to the Holy Quran, the Holy Quran is a book of life. It tells you the stories of nations before us to take example so we do not make the same mistakes they have done. And the only projection of the future is that you will be saved by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this life through succeeding your aims and goals, and in the hereafter through winning paradise. So that is essentially the Quran. Now we come to Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam. And Prophet Ibrahim figures very prominently in our faith. For instance, when you go and do Hajj, the first thing you do before Tawaf is 2 rak'ahs at al-Maqam al-Ibrahimi. Maqam Ibrahimi, you know, I'm sure those of you who went to Umrah or Hajj, you do the 2 rak'ahs and then you do the Tawaf. We actually, during Hajj, we recreate the story of Prophet Ibrahim every year. And that's why we have the most authentic story about Ibrahim alayhi salam. Let's talk about Ibrahim alayhi salam and how we think of it and how others think of it. Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, according to the Judeo-Christian belief, married a noble woman. Her name is Sarah. And he had a child by the name of Ishaq or Isaac. And in our story, we think that he married Sarah and Hajar. And he had 2 children, first Ismail and second Ishaq. The Holy Quran always mentions Ismail wa Ishaq, not Ishaq wa Ismail. And the Holy Quran is a very, very specific and accurate document because it's the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or so we believe. So he had 2 children, Ismail wa Ishaq, and his wives were 2, Hajar, who brought him the first child because Sarah did not have any children. Now, if you look at the literature of the evangelicals and the Christians in general, they say that Sarah was a noble, blue-blooded wife. So her child should be the king and the prince. But those who are the offsprings of Hajar are the children of the slaves. And this is said repeatedly on a very well-followed program called the Club, the 700 Club, by a man by the name of Pat Robertson. Of course, the young people have not seen Robertson because he died in, I think, 87 or something like that. So that's the first point of departure. And I personally had a personal experience because based on the interfaith movement, we started doing a lot of these interfaith movements. So in one of the churches, I was standing up wearing my garb, and then the assistant priest said, "Let us move in the name of Abraham and his wife, Sarah." So I said, "Excuse me, what happened to his other wife?" He said, "Oh no, it's okay. We just go in the name of his Prophet Ibrahim and his wife, Sarah." And of course, we did not move until she mentioned Hajar. And this is something that you need to know and teach your grandchildren and your children about it. Now, we come to the next item that I want to talk to you about, and that is the event of the sacrifice of Prophet Ibrahim. We know that in the Arab Manami and the Bahr, that Sayyidina Ibrahim told his son Ismail that I have seen a vision that I am offering you and slaughtering you to sacrifice you to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Ismail said, Ya Abdi fa'al ma tu'mar, do whatever you are commanded, and you'll find me obedient to you, my dear father. Now, in the Judeo-Christian story, they think that the event of sacrifice was between Ibrahim and his son, Ishaq. That's the first difference. The second difference is the location of the sacrifice. In Islam, we believe that the location of sacrifice was at the foothill of Mount Arafah, and we know that it was Ismail alayhi salam. In the Judeo-Christian story, they think it happened at the foothill of a mount called Mount Moriah, in actually the West Bank in Jerusalem. And Mount Moriah is the mount where the tree of bitter fruits grow. يعني شجرة المر، شجرة المر بتنمو فيه. So they think that he died, he was attempted to be slaughtered at the foothill of Mount Moriah. And by the way, Mount Moriah is the same as Temple Mount, is the same as where you see the wonderful Temple Mount, Dome of the Rock place that we believe that Prophet Muhammad did 20 rak'ahs and he was caused to ascend through the 7 heavens. So that is the second thing, is a place of attempted sacrifice. Look at the distances. Now, of course, there are minority stories that Moriah is close to Marwa. Some people say maybe it's Marwa, but this is the difference between our belief and the belief of the Judeo-Christian story. Now, we come to the next point I want to share with you, and that is the temple. Now, we all hear lately from our Zionist occupiers that they intend to destroy the Dome of the Rock and build in its place the temple. Now, the Holy Quran tells us about 2 structures that were built by 2 different prophets. The first one was Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam and his son Ismail, and that temple was Al-Kaaba, the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, the other temple they are talking about is the temple of Sayyidina Sulaiman, and it is also mentioned in the Quran, in Surah Al-Nahl. In Surah Al-Nahl, you know the story of Sayyidina Sulaiman, when Sayyidina Sulaiman went to send his emissaries to Yemen, where they come from, and they came back and they said, oh, we saw a queen that people worship and are very loyal to her, the Queen of Sheba, Malik al-Saba. And then they invited her to come over, and to invite her to come over, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has built in a very fast form the temple that we all hear about. It was a very fabulous temple. The floors were made out of crystal glass, such that, I'm sure you know the story in the Quran, that when the Queen of Sheba came in, took her skirt up because she thought it was a pond of water. So it was so wonderful place, and we know that in the Holy Quran. So the temple they are talking about is actually the temple that was built by the Judeo-Christians to commemorate the father of Ishaq and Yaqub. Do you know who's Yaqub? Yaqub is called Israel. And Israel means the one who actually does jihad with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He always had a difficulty with Allah. That is the translation. So what happened was, they wanted to commemorate the event of Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam. So David wanted to build the temple. So the wise men of the Judaic tribes said that you have so much blood in your hands, will let your son, the wise Sulaiman, build the temple. Now, what is this blood that he had in his hand? It is the story of Jalut wa Talut, Goliath and
David and Goliath.
Goliath and David, right? So David actually was leading the war, and he won over Goliath. Now the Goliath people are called in the Judeo-Christian teachings the Philistines, the anti-gods that David fought are called the Philistines. So when our occupiers talk about Philistines and the war they have, they consider the war that is a replica of what David did. They want to eliminate these anti-God, the Philistines. I'm not saying I believe in it, but that's where they come from. And that's why they built that temple, they claim, actually on the top of Mount Moriah. Did I confuse you, or you all understand? Any questions so far? Any questions?
Yes.
That means I put you to sleep, right? No, any questions?
Yes,
Yeah, one question.
So Dawood is followed?
Say,
So Dawood is followed, huh?
Dawood was?
Was he followed or was he?
No, Dawood fought with Galut.
Oh, he followed.
Yeah, Jalut, yeah, Goliath. And he had actually a string and a stone, and he hit it on his forehead, and he fell down, and he wanted by the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, and I'm trying to paraphrase because of the time. Now, so that is the story of the building of the temple at the foothill of Mount Moriah. Now comes another interesting event, and that is the fact that the people of what is today Europe, they wanted to actually come and take control of Jerusalem, which is believed to be the land of Jesus Christ. And they were very upset that the Muslims are in control of it. So they came to Jerusalem. And the temple was destroyed once by the Byzantines. When I say the Byzantines, they are actually, the Byzantines are the Greek Orthodox. The Greek Orthodox, with their church was, until today, the Greek Orthodox Church is in Istanbul. If you go to Istanbul, you will find a church with its fencing and so on and so forth. And I will tell you that story next time I come. But that church actually was completely dominated or actually marginalized by the Roman Catholic Church. So they destroyed the temple first, and then after 70 years, they rebuilt a very humble part of that temple, and that temple was built by them, and that was destroyed by the Romans because they had a revolution against them. Now, they have been through a lot of excavations to prove that there was a temple there. You could not find anything but little ceramic remnants and so on and so forth. Now, that is the story of the temple. But then comes a very interesting story, and that is Jerusalem. Al-Quds, it's called Orshalim, depending on who you talk to. So Al-Quds is a very interesting place for all religions. Why? For us, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed His message to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and before that, he sallallahu alaihi wasallam was praying at Hira or Hira cave, and he never directed his face to Mecca. Mecca was filled with over 390 idols. So the Prophet refused to worship the idols and direct his face to it, and he was always directing his face to Jerusalem. That's why we said, Ula al-Qiblatayn, the first of the two Qibla. We know the first Qibla was Jerusalem, and then the order of changing the Qibla, as we revealed, that Allah revealed in the Holy Quran, was revealed, and then we changed to Mecca after cleaning it of the idols. Sayyidina Umar al-Khattab was invited by the chief priest of the Church of the Sepulchre. The Church of the Sepulchre is Kanisat al-Qiyamah. Sayyidina Umar al-Khattab, he went to get the keys of the church from the chief priest. His name was Sephranius. And Sephranius was amazed, you read the history, of how humble this man who has changed the world after Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And he actually thought that his assistant, who was leading the camel, to be Umar ibn Khattab, because he was on the top of the camel at that time. Because what they did, they alternated riding on the camel. One would walk with the camel and one would be on the top of the camel. His turn came when he entered Jerusalem, and they made a mistake, and they said, Umar, no, I'm not Umar, I am the assistant. And Sayyidina Umar Khattab went in. And they had long negotiations. The negotiations centered about two important things. Sayyidina Umar, you are a Muslim, and we want to know how you will treat the Christians. So the produced a document called the Covenant of Omar, or Al-Wathiq al-Umariyah. And that is actually a very historic document, because in it, Sayyidina Umar al-Khattab wrote down that whatever the responsibilities of the Muslims will be that of the Christians, whatever the duties and the rights of the Muslims will be the same rights of the Christians. But then came the people of the book, and that is the Jews. Now, the Jews were prohibited from entering Jerusalem, and I want to repeat this, for 500 years, from the year about 160 to about 660. And they could not enter except the last few years. They were, after lots of trying, they actually were entered, but with the condition that they wear very demeaning clothing. And the clothing would be, you know, the jute that you get rice in, the big jute containers of rice, and very poor, and they only enter for one night and get out before the morning. After long negotiations, Sayyidina Umar al-Khattab agreed with Zephranius that they would allow the Jews to come in the morning and leave in the evening, and never to stay overnight in Jerusalem. And that was the end of the negotiations, and the key was given to Sayyidina Umar al-Khattab. And I said in Jum'ah, the key until today is held by Muslim Palestinian families in Jerusalem. Now, Mr. Netanyahu was falsifying history. Now listen to him. He claims that the Arabs and Muslims were the people that kicked the Jews out of Jerusalem. That is nothing but falsification of history done by the Zionist occupiers. And that is why I am here sharing with you some of this basic information. Now, of course, the Jews were allowed to come in and practice their religion, and of course, things went wonderful. And the extension of that, which I will close with, is what we call the golden era. They call it the golden era in human history. And that golden era happened in Andalusia, in Spain, when the people of the Jewish faith and the brother of the King of Spain invited the Muslims to cross the Mediterranean Sea to help them get that unjust king out. And Rahman, of course, you know, the very famous Gibraltar Rock, or Tariq ibn Ziyad, he crossed with the ships, and Musa ibn Nusayr, that's details. But anyway, they went in and they established for the first time, and I want to remind you this, the Muslims were in Spain, you know how many years? 800 years. 800 years. Until today, you go to the different places in Spain and you'll find people that are having ancestors from a Muslim background. As a matter of fact, I subscribe to a website which is reviving this from Morocco, reviving the history and making the connections and so on and so forth. Fascinating by professors, so forth. I'll give you a summary. That, yeah. So that is the thing about the golden era of Islam. Muslims, Christians, and Jews worked together and interacted together in a very peaceful way and produced the thing. Now, what happened later on, we'll talk about it, inshallah. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم إنه نعم المولى ونعم النصير. Any questions?
Yeah, who stopped Jews from coming to Jerusalem? Is because Allah prohibited that land for them?
Second? No, they claim that this land is our land. And, well, the Zionist movement was actually designed to be a secular movement. So they did not believe in any Bible or any Old Testament. but they claim, they call it the land of Israel.
No, for 500 years, they cannot enter
They
Jerusalem.
could not enter Jerusalem.
My question is, why? Because it's
Because the people who ran Jerusalem were the Romans. Today called Roman Catholic, but they are the Romans. They were in charge of it, and before them the Byzantines, and they could not enter it. 500 years. I was amazed to learn that. I don't know how many of you knew this.
But the reason why?
Huh?
Why they started?
Oh, because they were troublemakers. If you read the details, I don't want to give you details. That was not the place of it. But very difficult to. But read the history. Go to Google and Google it. Yeah, Bashir.
So, it is understood that why Jewish wants to live in Jerusalem or Israel because of the temple, close to the temple. But they are more Zionist evangelicals than Zionist Jews. Am I correct? Or Christian Zionist. Why are they helping Jews to?
His question is, why are the Zionist Christians are helping the Jews and trying to encourage them to build the temple? Read the Google again. That's why I refer you. God bless Google, because you know a lot of information, but we don't read. They think, the evangelicals think, that if the temple is built, then Jesus Christ is going to come and they all will be Christians. So they ask them, what will you do with the Jews who do not accept it? He said, blood rivers will be flowing in Jerusalem if they don't accept Jesus Christ's invitation to become Christians. But actually, if you watch, and I invite you to watch YouTube, the speeches, the ceremonies, speeches of the Jewish right wing, and they are all right wing, because they actually they are full of hate. It's an amazing thing. The amount of hate that they have in their heart. We were never taught this way. Those who taught us Islam, our parents and our imams and so on, they never ever put that hate in our hearts. And that is something that we should avoid. What they are doing to our brothers and sisters in Gaza and the West Bank is very sad, very depressing. But the answer to it is not to hate. We don't hate anybody. We invite everybody to come to peace, the peace of Islam. Did I answer your question? Any questions from the sisters?
Feed the other one.
I was gonna ask, since the occupation, the Israelis been, the archaeologists been digging under the Hamas, trying to find a remaining of the Heikel Suleiman or whatever, and they never found any evidence. They have not ever found any evidence of Jewish existence in Jerusalem or in Palestine at all. And what they claim their holy site of Ha'it al-Burak, which is they call the Wailing Wall. Actually, this is the holy site for Muslims that they have occupied, and they claim that theirs. So that it's all their fallacy. They're trying, they're effortless, to find an evidence, to link them to the land, and they have not been able to do so.
So what they say, if you Muslims have Mecca and the Christians have Rome, we need to have our own. So we have the temple. That's their argument. But the point about the fence, which is the rock, which you call the wall, the Wailing Wall. Actually, it was the wall that actually surrounded Jerusalem to prevent anybody from entering it except if they are allowed to. That's what happened. So that is the thing about Jerusalem. Any questions from the sisters? You're allowed to ask questions. Any questions? You can write the question and send it to me if you're bashful, and I'll be glad to answer it. Any questions from the brothers? No questions. We can go home. Go ahead.
So you mentioned, you know, like the faith alliance or whatever, you know, the faith alliances, you know, like that you. The interfaith. The interfaith.
Yeah.
So how much accomplishment that has come out of?
I'll tell you something. The question is, how much accomplishment have we done with the interfaith? The most important thing is to learn about them. We never learned in our country because we grew up in majority countries, majority Muslim countries, so Christians are minorities. We are minorities. So now we need to learn how to minorities. That's the first thing that I think we have. The second thing, we insisted, and I hope those who are in charge of interfaith, I hate photo ops. Now, as you stand up an imam next to a rabbi, next to a priest, take a picture with the paper hallelujah. We have a love between the three, and if you look very long lost. So, what we insisted on in the interfaith model that we have is that we learn from each other. So we agreed, the first prototype, we agreed that we meet on a monthly basis and we will discuss one of the fundamentals of your faith. I'll give you an example. We were discussing Siyam, fasting. So we asked them to tell us how we do the fasting and the history. And then we discussed our fasting. One of the Catholic priests said, "This is amazing." So I asked him, "Why is it amazing?" He said, "Because this is exactly how we used to do the fasting a long time ago." I said, "What happened?" These are the things that make you know what's happening around you. And I said, "What happened?" He said, "We had to change so the people would follow us and would come to church." And then we discovered that that's the difference between who we are and what others are. That we still, today, while the Muslims are in the trenches, in the doldrums, we are really looked down upon and still tell people that zina is haram, that khamr is haram, that riba is haram, all the elements. Say, well, you guys are nothing, what are you giving us? Well, we are Muslims. We believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and it's a matter of patience. The other thing I want to talk about is we got the evangelicals. We had an interfaith with the evangelicals. And we suggested a study, do we worship the same God? The evangelicals say that the Muslims worship the shaitan. I'm sure you all know that. And if you don't know, please know it, because your kids and your grandkids are exposed to all this every day. On university campuses, boys and girls are exposed to people who do dawah for evangelicals and stuff like that. So it's very important. So we asked the question, do we worship the same God? And it took us a year of study, right? They present and we present, you know what happened? They concluded that yes, Muslims worship the same God. Now, we wanted to put that on record, so I called the chief editor of the Los Angeles Times, who's a good friend, and I said, "Hey, I've got some breaking news for you." She said, "What?" I said, "Well, the evangelicals have finally admitted that we worship the same God." It was published in the Los Angeles Times, and of course, people who participated in the study are not there anymore. They were told them to go home. But that is the benefit of it. If you do it with the niyat of making a difference, not for photo ops. I hate photo ops. Yes.
I feel, like
I have a question. So you mentioned the first time that they didn't enter Jerusalem for 500 years, which means correct. Now they are there from 1948 until now, like official enter. So this is because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promised us in the Quran when He said, "La tufsidunna fil ardi marratayn." This is the second time they enter. So this is like an ifsad. Allah He prepared something for them.
Yeah, I have read a number of explanations of these verses, but historically the two times they were actually doing fasad was the two times the two temples. But then other scholars who translate these verses say that it can be perpetual, so that's the thing. But I shared with you during the Jummah the fact about this lady, her name is Zainab al-Ghazali, a very prominent Muslim leader that's called Rahmanullah. And she was having an interview on Radio Cairo. I come from Cairo. So the interview was a very famous interviewer was asking her, how was your trip? And she said, fantastic. I had a very good time in Jerusalem, but I am worried. I'm very sad. So he asked her, why are you sad? She said, because I went to fetch prayers, fetch namaz, where I only had one line praying fetch in Masjid al-Aqsa. She said, why should it be one? So well, because Muslims don't know the value of Masjid al-Aqsa. I am afraid it will be taken away from us. In 1967, 2 years later, happened what happened, and the three armies were defeated, and Jerusalem has been lost in the hands. By the way, I just want to conclude with a very interesting thing. You know Surah Al-Baqarah? Surah Al-Baqarah, chapter of the cow, which is about the cow that was supposed to be sacrificed by the people of the Jewish faith. In the Quran it says, Baqaratun Safra, Baqaratun Lawnuha. Now, they believe it is red, and they already purchased 4 red cows. I don't know if you know the news or not. They purchased 4 red cows, and they shipped them to Jerusalem in preparation of slaughtering the cows and start building the temple. And what's happening in Gaza, what's happening in the West Bank, is nothing to do with October 7th. It has to do with the removal of all the Palestinians. Remember this, the Palestinians in their head are the anti-God. And I didn't know that. And as a matter of fact, many of you probably didn't know that. Because the word Palestinian triggers in them what they teach in churches and in synagogues, that they are the anti-God. And we need to correct that. That is the core of the misinformation that is now prevalent in the different churches.
Yeah, there's a question.
Thank you very much.
There's a question from the sisters. A sister is saying, what's the other reason in that why Christians believe in Mount Maria or was it just because they believe Isa alayhi salam was crucified there?
They believed that the crucifixion was done at the same location, and that when he was resurrected from that location, and that is, it's called Kanisatul Qiyamah, the Church of the Sepulchre, and that is, that's why Mount Moriah happened to be a very interesting place for the 3 religions. But the only time the Jews had peace for a long term were the 800 years in Spain. And when what happened to the Muslims and the Jews has happened, who opened up their arms to meet them and take care of them? It was the Moroccans, the Tunisians, who are there until today. It was the Turks, and so on and so forth. It was the Muslims who opened up their arms. When the people of the Jewish faith in France were actually mistreated by Hitler, it was the central mosque of France that took him inside the mosque, and something that the Catholic Church did not do, and they protected them. But the problem is the Zionists actually have falsified the history, and we have failed in making that history well known. We're making it in a different way. Yes?
One question. There's indications from scholars about the year 2027, even like Sheikh Yassine mentioned it in the Quran.
I cannot hear you, but that's not.
There are some indications or scholars that mentioned that their relation or mentioned in the Quran about the 2027, the end of Israel. And it was also was in a number of scholars they brought this. I'm not sure if there is. Could you elaborate on that?
The question is that there are indications based in the Holy Quran that the end of Israel will be 2027. Actually, it's based on an interview with Sheikh Ahmed Yassine. Sheikh Ahmed Yassine had an interview with Al Jazeera with Ahmed Mansour, in which he said that Israel is going to be finishing in the 20s. He didn't say 2027, and some others actually on social media said, what they do, they go by generations. But Quran didn't say that. Quran said, تعالوا Quran مرتين. And then, but that is conjecture. It's not in the Quran. Thank you.
Allah, a few points before I let everyone go, just an addition. With the interfaith, which I think is very important, and I've been doing this for many, many years. If the objective of the interfaith is that we think will create alliances and friendships, then I think we're fooling ourselves. I think the objective that I see is coming from the Quran Kareem, وَلَا تُجَادِلُوا أَهْلَ الْكِتَابِ إِلَّا بِالَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ. We are required to engage with them in dialogue to where we prove the truth of what we have and we exchange with them in a domestic conversation that is subtle and peaceful, the truth that we have. Not just to convert them, no, but because it's our job to tell people what our faith is. Now, there might be benefits on the way to where relationships are built, but I fear that over the years, those relationships have been a compromise, most of the time, of principles that we have in our communities, because we have to give in so they can give in, or they can give us. It's a very concerning aspect that I have to compromise my values so I can be accepted. I'm a big, I go big when it comes to interfaith, because I think we do need to engage. I'm a member of the Interfaith Alliance on a national level, on the board. But I never have looked at it as a matter of we become friends and high five and high five and whatever. And they have proved to fail to stand when the truth comes, as we see with the issue of Gaza. They fail to come to speak the truth and witness what history is doing. On the contrary, many of them, if not almost all of them, stood on the wrong side of history in accepting genocide. So I wish our organizations and our leaders and individuals understand that there is a fact that cannot change and will not change. Even if we want it to change, it cannot change. That will never change. Yeah, that's not going to happen. There's another fact that will never change. It cannot change. They will not love you. It cannot change. There's a third fact in the Quran. These are all internal, emotional facts that Allah has access to them that we don't. Because Allah knows what's in the hearts. He said, قَدْ بَدَتِ الْبَغْضَاءُ مِنْ أَفْوَاهِهِمْ وَمَا تُخْفِي صُدُورُهُم أَكْبَرُ. Their hatred is sealed. It's carved in their nature, in their DNA. The only way for that hatred to change is if they move away from where they are from, or we move away from where we are at. That's the only way to eliminate that. And we're not willing to compromise and convert so they can accept us. And even those who have converted, for example, to Judaism, like the Africans, from Ethiopia, they're treated like a third, fourth class. Dr. Yahya mentioned today about the chief rabbi for the military groups that he called the blacks monkeys. And he's referencing to general blacks, even Jews. So this is a fact that doesn't change. Does that mean we stop communicating? Stop meeting? No, absolutely not. Because the Rasul met with them at the time there were wars happening. On the second level, the question that the brother asked over there about prophecies. The Rasul's prophecies himself, our ulama have said that we do not take those prophecies and point specific incidents or time in history and say, that's it. Because first of all, we don't have a concrete evidence that this is prophecy is this. And it might be proven wrong later, and then people will come back and say Islam is mistaken. Second thing they say, that prophecy sometimes can come multiple times throughout history. Yeah. So they can come multiple times, so they're not just for one specific history or moment. Now, that's the prophecies for the Rasul. Imagine someone else that is extracting understandings from verses they read and using calculations that they assume it to be true. We cannot accept such because there's no concrete of that. There's no evidence of it. And when 2020, this is like what the West said in the year 2000. They said the world is going to come to an end. And a lot of people felt like it's going to be true because a computer cannot switch. We're still around. And the Jews can find their ending soon, or they can find their ending later. But we know for sure that a time will come where a battle will happen between Muslims and Jews, where the rocking tree will speak and say, Ya Muslim, Ya Abdullah, we know that this is going to happen, but that's not how we approach it. Sheikh Abdul Majid al-Zindani, he's one of the pioneers for scientific facts of the Quran and Sunnah. And even with those scientific facts, he used to tell us that you cannot address this as this is the absolute truth, because all of a sudden science seems to cooperate with what the ayah is, because it can change. He gave us an example. في ظلمات ثلاث, that the fetus is within 3 layers of darkness. He said in the past, scholars used to say it's al-mashima. I don't know what they mean in English. I'm not a doctor. And then they use this, the mashima or the doctor. But they mentioned those things in the stomach, but then he said science today have proven that actually the machine itself is 3 layers. So which one is it? The bottom line is, let's hold on to all these prophecies and know for a fact that things will happen. When they happen, Allah knows. We thank Dr. Yahya. We thank Dr. Yahya Rahman for being with us. He is a cure on an injury and a pleasure to be around with his gentle and kindness and smile and energy. We hope that we will see him many, many, many times, but we are going to see him tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night we're going to have a lecture on Islamic banking. Is it really Islamic? We're just changing words, whatever. And again, I spent about 42 years of my life studying it from the main sources in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. So I wanted to know the prohibitions and so on. I want to share that with you tomorrow night, inshallah. I wish you had a projector.
We do.
We think you have a projector. That sounds good. So I just want to conclude by saying that it is very important, if you can, to understand those around you. Then you can communicate with them. And أمرت أن أخاطب الناس على قدر عقولهم. That I was ordered to communicate with people to the extent they understand. So how can you communicate with others while you don't understand where they come from? Like the word Philistines, right? I didn't know that. Discovered that was a revelation for me. Like God, who is God, and so on and so forth.
I have a question. I didn't mean to be rude in this question. Interfaith. We know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like the Shaykh said, وَلَنْ تَرْضَ عَنْكَ الْيَهُودُ وَلَا النَّصَارَى حَتَّى تَتَّبِعَ. There is another ayah, تُحِبُّهُمْ وَلَا يُحِبُّونَكُمْ, etc. Now the question is, Allah said in the Fatiha, غَيْرِ الْمَغْضُوبِ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا الضَّالِّينَ. We know the مغضوب عليهم اليهود. If we know that Yahud, they will never listen to us, why we have to sit with them? I know the Christian, we are darling, misguided. We can explain what Allah is, our have. But the Jews, they know. And we know that they know. So why we have to have the interfaith?
No, no. First of all, I'll tell you something that I don't know. I am the leader. We imported a lot of Quran translation from King Fahd Press. And the King Fahd Press to distribute it to all the students at the school district of Los Angeles. The goal was to get every student in the Los Angeles school district, I think it was 5 million or 8 million. And we wrote a book and then we distributed them. And in the translation, the footnote said the Maghdub alayhim are the Jews and the Tawhid are the Christians. And it created the havoc. They stopped distributing the books. Because, as a matter of fact, the original translation, and I want to give you an advice for the sisters also. The best translation of the Holy Quran is the original translation by Maulana Yusuf Ali, published by Amana Publications. It's a green cover book. You can buy it on Amazon and it's green. And it has, and if you want something, if you want a gift in your life for you and your children, read the Quran translation in Arabic and in English, and the footnotes, very important, the footnotes, because it will tie things down. Well, the man, God bless his soul, by the way, he died bankrupt. I don't know if you know about Yusuf Ali. We can talk about that later on. But the man, rahimahullah, you know, he spent 30 years or 32 years translating the Quran. And it's the best translation, and I suggest that you do. But that is the problem. The problem is some translators say it is the Christians and the Jews. But also you can expand it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Maghdub alayhim, are those who do not follow the righteous path, including Muslims. Our da'wah is not an ethnic da'wah. Our da'wah is a global da'wah, which includes everybody. Includes Christians, Muslims, Zoroastrians, everybody. Everybody is a candidate to come and say, La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah. That is how we are trained. كل الناس إن شاء الله يقبلوا الإسلام. وإحنا لا نغير الناس. We do not change people's hearts. Who change people's hearts? مقلب القلوب. يا مقلب القلوب. Sayyidina Muhammad صلى الله عليه وسلم, he used to say, يا مقلب القلوب. Yeah, one who changes hearts, please change the heart of Umar. You know, when they told him, make an ayah that Umar would lose his money and his resources and become bankrupt, and brother, Prophet ﷺ said, no, I want to use the resources of Umar to promote Islam, to reinforce Islam. And he said, Ya Muqallib al-Qulub, change the heart of Sayyidina Umar al-Khattab to become Muslim, and it was, alhamdulillah. So when we do, what we do is act as catalysts, tell people about Islam. And everybody is a candidate to be a Muslim. And I want to conclude with this so I can go home. This is a watch. It's a great watch, beautiful watch, and I like it very much. Thank you very much. That is a watch. But here is another way of presenting it. This is a great watch, and it's a wonderful watch. I've had it and I love it, but I have it for sale. How much will you pay for it? How much will you pay for it? $5? What about you? Now, what is the difference between the first presentation and the second presentation? In the first presentation, you never considered buying the watch. And that's what we do. The Quran is very good, and the Quran is Muhammad, and then goodbye, nice meeting you. We never ask for the order. What is asking for the order? How about coming and joining us and learning about Islam? How about coming and joining us in the masjid, then you can get to meet us. That is asking for the order. And I tell you, I used to work downtown Los Angeles. So in Ramadan, I used to spend my lunchtime walking around the city. And then I got those Hare Krishna people or whatever, I don't know, the people that go with go like this and wear yellow and stuff like that. And I passed by them the first day and the second day. So I said, I'm going to watch who is following him. You know something? They filled up vans of people who wanted to know. And they took him to change them. So that is what we don't do. We need to invite somebody to Islam. Make it a promise to yourself that I want to invite somebody to Islam, one person in my lifetime. That's it. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم.
جزاكم الله خير. Tomorrow night, inshallah, over here.
And by the way, if you want copies of the khutbah or copies of this